which congressional districts are considered the most competitive with an even partisan lean. Today on Political Access, we're going to look at all 7 of these districts, which according to Cook Political Report are the true toss-ups. So first let's start here on Wikipedia, and if you don't already know, the Cook Political Report, they rate all the different states and congressional districts, and they assign it a rating to gauge how competitive or slanted it is to one party or the other. Now this is known as the Cook Partisan Voting Index, or Cook PVI. So you might have some complaints about Cook or their background or some of their ratings, but they are reputable enough to be used here on Wikipedia. So all the districts are here on Wikipedia, but let's switch over to the Cook Political Report and see what they say about their formula. Now they have an example here where D+2 means that in the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections, the state or district performed 2 points more Democratic in terms of the two-party vote share than the nation did as a whole. So if it's within a half a point, it's considered an even partisan lean. Now, one other thing we have to consider here is they also say that the formula has been tweaked since their last update in 2021. They used to use a 50-50 mix of the 2 most recent presidential elections. Now they're switching to a 75-25 weighting, where 75% of the weight is put on the most recent presidential election, which is 2020. So we have to keep that in mind as we go through these districts, and we also have to keep one other thing in mind, and that is redistricting. It's especially hard to extrapolate data for new congressional districts based on old boundaries for a prior presidential election. So I know it can get complicated, but let's just try to quickly go through this without making it too confusing. Now the first district here is Pennsylvania's 17th. This is located near Pittsburgh. It has a lot of Allegheny County in it, and it's represented by Democrat Chris Deluzio. Now we can see here that Biden won this 51-48 in 2020, and Trump won it 49-46 in 2016. Now assuming that data is correct, that should be under the old district, but even so we see here that the Cook PVI is even. So if we go down to the recent House results, Chris Deluzio, he won this district by almost 7 points. So it might be considered even, but I think this is probably a bit of a blue-leaning district, and this was an open seat, and Republicans didn't really make it all that close. So there's almost no chance a Republican is actually going to win this seat. So I do think the even rating for this district is a little bit misleading. Now the next district here is Nebraska's 2nd. This is represented by Republican Don Bacon. This is that district that has Omaha and some of the suburbs in it. And since redistricting, it's gotten a little bit redder. But we can see back in 2016, Trump actually won this by 2 points. In 2020, Biden won it by about 6. And if we go down to the recent House results, we could see Don Bacon, he won re-election, but it was only by about 2.5 points. He's known for winning these narrow elections, and Bacon is considered a light or more moderate Republican. He's not going to rock the boat too much. So once Bacon retires, there's a decent chance the Democrats are going to pick this seat up. So as much as a lot of Republicans aren't big fans of Don Bacon, he's the right kind of guy to win this seat. The next district is Florida's 27th. This is represented by Republican Maria Elvira Salazar. Now, this is located in South Florida in Miami-Dade County, and redistricting did make this a little bit more favorable for the Republicans. But back in 2020, Joe Biden won this district by 3 points, but back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won it by about 19 points. That's a really big gap and a lot of shift in a short time. If we go down to these recent results, we could see Salazar won by about 14.5 points. In her previous election, she won by only about 2.8. So aside from redistricting, this district has really swung toward the right. There's a large Cuban population in it, and it's not impossible for a Democrat to win it, but I think given the recent midterms, this is now a district that's going to be considered pretty much off the table for the Democrats. Let's move on to the next district, and that is New Hampshire's 1st. This is represented by Democrat Chris Pappas. And if we look at these presidential results, we could see Biden won this by about 6 points. Prior to that, Donald Trump actually carried it by about 1.5 points. So it does depend who the candidates are, but I think this is probably another district that tilts toward the Democrats, and that might even be further indicated by going down here and looking at the recent results. Chris Pappas won by about 8 points, and that's an improvement on his margin from 2020. So this is sort of like the Florida district. It's not impossible for a Republican to win here, but if Pappas is the incumbent, it would take an extraordinary Republican and a great environment to be able to flip this seat. Even if Pappas retires and it's an open seat, I still think it would take a reasonable Republican to be able to pull it off. The next district is Pennsylvania's 1st. This is represented by Republican Brian Fitzpatrick. This is mostly located in Bucks County, southeast Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. Now, the presidential results are not on this Wikipedia page, but we can go down here and see what happened in the midterms, and Fitzpatrick won by almost 10 points. That is down slightly from his margin in 2020. This is a district that seems like Democrats were going to be able to put in play, but given that it got barely under double digits, it seems like it would take a lot to be able to take out Fitzpatrick. If he does retire, then I think there'll be a big battle for this seat and Democrats could possibly pick it up. But for right now, Fitzpatrick, he appears to be a reasonably strong incumbent. Let's go on to the next district, and that is New York's 19th. Now, redistricting makes this one especially difficult to explain, but it is represented by Republican Mark Molinaro, and the easiest thing to do is switch over to the recent House results, and we could see that Molinaro won with just about 50% of the vote. It's a 1.5% margin. Now, given that Republicans had a lot of success in New York in the U.S. House, the amount of narrow margins are going to make all of these prime targets for the Democrats to try to flip in the next election. Any district that either party loses by 1 or 2 points, it's going to end up high on your list of targets to potentially flip. Now let's go to the last district, and that is Colorado's 8th. Now this was a new district, as Colorado gained an extra seat, and this was won by Democrat Yadira Caraveo. And we could see here, if the new boundaries were in place for the last presidential election, Biden would have won it by about 4.5 points. So to me, that district is probably a little bit more slanted toward the Democrats. But if we go down here, we could see Caraveo. She won this seat by only 48% of the vote, and that was a 0.7% margin. The Libertarian there got almost 4% of the vote. So we don't know which way it's going to trend. But if you're winning the district with under 49% of the vote, that's not a great sign. Now, she will be the incumbent. It will probably be a little bit harder to take her out if you're the Republicans. But a strong candidate or a strong environment, they could give you that extra couple of percent you're going to need to flip this seat. So those are the 7 districts, and if we switch back over here to the Cook political report, here are the 7. We can see all of them have an even partisan lean. It also tells you what part of the state these districts are in. And next to that, it shows you the 2020 Biden vote and the 2020 Trump vote. And next to that is the 2016 Clinton vote, followed by the 2016 Trump vote. So whether you agree with the formula, whether you're a big fan of it, whether you don't care for it too much, it does give you some idea of which districts are at least reasonably competitive. There's all kinds of different formulas you could use. Nothing is going to satisfy everybody, and nothing is going to be perfect. So these are the most competitive of the peer toss-ups. But any district that's even a D+1 or an R+2, those also could go either way depending on the environment and the candidates. So of these 7 districts, Republicans have won 4 of them. Democrats have 3 of them. So both parties are going to have to really go hard to defend their seats. And then, of course, they're going to go on the offense to try to flip the remaining seats. But as we saw, as we looked through the House results, all of the margins were not super close. Some of them were close to double digits. So after the next presidential election, I'm sure these Cook PVI ratings will be updated and changed. But for right now, this is what we've got. Everything is hinging on that next presidential election. Then a lot of this stuff will make more sense. But for right now, these are the most competitive districts on Cook. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of these 7 districts? And do you care about the Cook PVI, or are you not a big fan? Let me know down below. And on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.